Chapter 12, Stolen Hearts. Ruby was standing on the deck of the ship. She turned around and saw a stranger standing behind her. He had curly brown hair and warm golden eyes, set against a warm golden tan. He looked as attractive as a movie star, but he looked warm and approachable as well. Ruby immediately felt drawn to him. "Care for a cup of coffee?" the stranger said in a deep, charming voice. Ruby was not sure about how to react, but then she decided to enjoy her trip and to start taking chances. "All right. I accept," she responded. The man led her below deck to a restaurant area. It all looked as if it was on land. She could not believe that she was actually on the water. They sat down and the waiter approached. "Could you please bring some of your best coffee for the lady and myself?" the stranger said. When the waiter left, Ruby sat as if transfixed. "Oh, where are my manners?" the handsome stranger exclaimed. He extended his right hand. "My name is Farrell, and might I know yours?" he asked politely. "I am Ruby from Canada," Ruby responded. She wondered why she had mentioned her place of origin. "Oh, how delightful. I love Canada. I myself am from Spain, but I love to travel," Farrell explained. Ruby wondered why his name was so unusual. "Oh, I guess you're wondering where my name comes from? Other people always ask me that. Well, my grandfather named me after a famous painting that he had once owned. There was a certain person in the painting who supposedly resembled me," he explained, as if he had read Ruby's thoughts. "Oh, that's rather interesting," Ruby commented. "And what does your name mean apart from the obvious?" he asked. "Oh, we never really discussed it. I suppose my mom just loved rubies," Ruby laughed. She was feeling rather at ease with this guy. He was handsome and also had a mature attitude which made her feel safe. "I am ahead of you with something though," Farrell said after their coffee had arrived. "Oh, ahead with what?" Ruby asked with interest. "I know that you sing, so I already did know your name." "Oh, okay then. Did you see me on stage at the theater?" Ruby asked. "No, I saw and heard you sing at a fashion show and then I happened to run into you here," Farrell said with a big, confident smile. His voice was deep and strong, like that of an opera singer. Ruby was not sure what to do with his confession. Was this perhaps her first stalker? Or was he just an avid admirer? Was he perhaps also a singer? "Oh, don't worry, I'm not a stalker. I booked this trip a long time ago," Farrell said and laughed at her facial expression. Ruby wondered whether he had the ability to read her mind. It was sounding as if he was psychic. "Okay, that makes perfect sense, of course," Ruby agreed. "So this is purely coincidental. Great. How long will you be on the ship?" she asked. "I might get off at the next port, Dover in England, but I can also extend my trip if nobody needs me urgently for business affairs there," he explained. They spoke until dinner time. Ruby could not believe that she had relaxed so easily. She said goodbye and went to practice with her new band members for the following night's show. Ruby enjoyed the show because the atmosphere was warm and intimate. The small theater on the ship was warm and very glamorous, with maroon velvet drapery and gold rails along the steps leading up to the stage, from the floor area. Ruby slept late the following morning, because she had practiced until late with the band on the previous evening. "Ruby, there's a gift with a letter for you here," Maxim said, when he ran into her on the deck, where she was searching for her new friend Farrell. "Thank you, Maxim," she said when she took the brightly wrapped box from him. Back in her cabin, Ruby unwrapped the box quickly and noticed that it contained Swiss chocolates. She then opened the envelope, and the note inside read, "Thank you for a very refreshing and inspiring afternoon." It was signed as simply, Farrell. Ruby was wondering where he was because she had really enjoyed chatting with him. He had seemed so sincere. Ruby then searched for him around the ship, but she had to give up after about half an hour, because she had a voice training session coming up. "So, who was the mysterious package from?" Revel, one of the band members, asked. "Oh, it's a guy I met on the ship yesterday. I think he disembarked at the port in Dover though, because he did mention that he might get off there." "Well, that happens a lot when one meets people on a ship. Here today, gone tomorrow, but cheer up. You're still going to meet many more interesting people here," Revel concluded with a pat on Ruby's shoulder. "I have to go and search for someone myself now. See you later," he said before strolling away. After about 2 months on the ship, Ruby began to receive a small box of chocolates after every night's performance. The chocolates inside the box were in the shape of roses, and they were individually wrapped in red foil paper. After the 3rd time, she began to wonder about the identity of the sender. It could not be Farrell, because he had sent different chocolates and she had given up on the idea of seeing him again. According to her estimation, too much time had passed since she had last seen him, so she would be foolish to expect him to just suddenly show up again out of the blue. I have no idea about who the sender of the chocolates is, Ruby confided in Lila, the other female vocalist of the band. I would say enjoy it while it lasts. Perhaps he is too shy to reveal his identity. You mean he perhaps has a problem with his self-esteem? Lila asked. I don't know. Maybe he's really not so good looking. Lila laughed heartily. They were sitting at the bar after the night's performance and chatted on about the past day's events. Don't look now, but I think we have found the answer to our questions, Lila said suddenly. Chapter 13 Living the Dream. Ruby tried hard not to turn around. Good evening, beautiful ladies. Ruby heard a voice which she did not recognize, so she turned around slowly. A man with elegantly styled, sleek, dark hair and arresting green eyes was standing there, with a gift box in his hands. It looked familiar, because it resembled the boxes of chocolates which Ruby had been receiving. I would be most pleased if you would receive this as a token of appreciation for your beautiful voice, the stranger said. Ruby was slightly overwhelmed. She was not used to so much personal attention. Excuse me, but Maxim is waiting for me, Lila said quickly and rushed off. Ruby fleetingly wondered if Lila had arranged this meeting. May I ask how long will you be singing on the ship, because I really enjoyed listening to you, the stranger asked politely. Oh, for a couple of months still, Ruby replied. She was beginning to relax. So what is your name? Ruby continued, still waiting for him to introduce himself. Oh, pardon my imprudence. My name is Severin Castrello. Pleased to make your acquaintance, he said with a bow. Do you mind if I take a seat? He continued. Oh, you may sit, since you have practically earned a few minutes of chatting with me, Ruby stated. She felt bold now. All right, I confess. I am smitten with your voice and no effort will be too great for me, Severin stated, with his hands up in surrender. Ruby had intended to cut him short after a few minutes, because it was already going past her bedtime. Maxim wanted them to rest enough. She continued to chat with Severin because he was very entertaining and she didn't feel the hours passing. The following morning when Ruby woke up, the first thought on her mind was Severin with his beautiful green eyes and charming smile. Would she find that he had also disappeared like Farrell, who apparently did have business matters to attend to in Dover after all? Ruby asked herself. Severin had been so interesting though. She actually thought about him with longing as she got ready quickly and rushed off to get brunch, because she was really hungry. Ruby was really enjoying her food while she read an email from her mom. According to her mother, everyone at home was missing her terribly, but they wanted her to enjoy herself. Ruby suddenly experienced a touch of nostalgia. Perhaps I should take some time off, she said to herself. Oh, am I interrupting? Ruby looked up and there stood Severin, with his hair shining in a ray of sunlight. His eyes seemed to be filled with a golden light. On second thought, perhaps I should stay, Ruby thought again. No, you are most welcome, Ruby responded. She wondered when she had become so trusting of men. You seem to be having a conversation with yourself? Severin asked. Ruby felt confused for a moment, before realizing that she had spoken out her thoughts aloud. Oh, don't worry about that. I was just reading an email from my mom, she explained. All right. When were you last at home? Severin asked, taking a seat by her side. More than a year ago, Ruby answered. Am I right in assuming that you don't have a husband back home, since you are not wearing a wedding ring? Severin asked with a smile. No. At home I have my parents and my 2 siblings, Ruby explained. How about you? She asked. Well, I have only my parents. I am a lonely only child, Severin stated with a mischievous smile on his face. Oh, I don't believe for a moment that you could be lonely, Ruby said boldly. Guilty as charged, Severin said in playful surrender. I believe that loneliness is not possible, when one has so many people around who might need assistance. As soon as one reaches out to someone else, there is no possibility of loneliness, he added. Oh, is that why you reached out to me? Ruby laughed. Mr. Castrello, there is an urgent phone call for you, a man who was holding a cell phone said as he approached them. Ruby wondered whether she should get up and leave, since she had done eating and the phone call might be private. She rose to leave, but Severin reached out and touched her hand. Don't leave, it will only take a few seconds, he said. So Ruby sat back down. Oh really? Severin said to someone on the phone. But how is that possible? He said into the phone again. Ruby read her mother's email a second time while she waited. The following moment, Severin jumped up and waved to her. Sorry, I have to leave now, he said to her briefly before rushing off while still speaking on the phone. How very odd, someone said behind her. Men just keep on running away from you. Chapter 14 Threatened Dreams. Ruby turned around to see who was talking. She could not believe her eyes when Marion, whom Leroy had cheated her with during high school days, stood there with a bright smile on her face. My goodness, how did they allow you onto the ship? Ruby asked. Their standards must be dropping, she added with a sneer. Well, for your information, I'm here on business. I am a very good lawyer now, Marion stated with her head held high, as she sat down opposite Ruby. Well, that still remains to be seen. You haven't really been at it for very long, my friend. By the looks of it, though, you are lacking in the area of self-esteem, Ruby stated. Oh, and your self-esteem is so high that you're frightening off all the men in your life. Even new ones, it seems, Marion replied. Oh, now I see. You are so insecure of yourself that you have stooped to stalking me, Ruby said as she rose and began to walk away. Oh, you're wrong, my dear. Your reputation only seems to precede you, that's all, Marion stated as Ruby walked away. Ruby was determined to prove Marion wrong. How dare she sneak up on her like that? Ruby sat down in front of the mirror in her cabin. It was clear that Marion was jealous of her. She could not have followed her around though, Ruby thought. Marion was not that financially prosperous yet, because she was only starting out in her career as an attorney, so it could only be a coincidence that they were on a ship together. Marion might only be accompanying a client. Ruby got all the news about what was going on in her old schoolmates' lives whenever she contacted Chris, or her sister Meshai, so she knew about Marion's career progress. So Ruby shook out her bright auburn curls with her hands and vowed to change her hairstyle. It should give her a new sense of self-confidence. Ruby walked back up to the deck and went to stand away from the crowds who were looking through their binoculars at scenes in the far-off distance. The view of an island in the distance was colorful and beckoning. Oh, so you like to separate yourself from the rest, I see, Severin said from behind her. Ruby turned around and experienced a sense of relief that Marion's words were unfounded. No, I just wanted to listen to the sound of the seagulls. I cannot hear them above the voices of the crowd, Ruby explained. First of all, though, let me apologize for leaving you like that. It was a message about my mother. She was not feeling so well and had to go to the hospital. Oh my, is she going to be all right? Ruby asked in alarm. Her doctor is with her now, so she should be doing well soon, Severin assured Ruby. Is your mother on any specific medication? She asked further. Yes, she is, but I think the weather might be affecting her. It's been a really hot summer in Turkey, Severin explained. So your parents live in Turkey? Ruby asked, surprised. Yes, they do, and so did I. Recently I live all over the world, Severin added with a broad smile. Ruby wondered whether she should pursue the subject of his actual place of abode. Was he so rich or so unsettled that he did not have a stable home? Ruby did not feel confident enough to question him, though. That sounds really interesting and exciting, she commented. Oh, do you see that island over there? Yes. It's a lovely place. I was there about 8 months ago for a product launch. If we go ashore I could show you around, Severin stated. Would that be all right? Wow, really? I would love to walk around in a place like that. It looks like a place of fantasy, Ruby answered. Then I will be happy to take you. We might even have an early dinner there, Severin said as he looked at the island with his set of binoculars. It is all right as long as we are back in time for tonight's show, Ruby replied. So, do you like to know what's there before you arrive? She asked with interest. I like to prospect ahead of time. That's how I operate in the business world, Severin said thoughtfully. So now, will you tell me what kind of business you do? Ruby asked as she faced Severin square up. I am involved in quite a large variety of businesses. If you stick around you would soon find out about all of them, I suppose? Severin asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, I cannot exactly say that I would stick around in one place. As you can see, I am moving around from one place to another all the time, Ruby said as she gestured to the water around them. Very well then, let me rephrase it, Severin said patiently. Will you stick around and have me in your life regardless of where you end up career-wise? Severin asked. I promise to keep you happy and well entertained, he added. Well, if you keep your word I will stick around, Ruby said in a light tone. If you could sing as if you were singing only for me, I would go out of my way to spoil you rotten, Severin promised. All right then. I see you love living large, Ruby laughed. So, are you up to the challenge? Severin asked as he stared straight into Ruby's eyes. For a moment she felt as if she was drowning in his eyes, because they looked so deep. Ruby tried to compose herself. Let's see how you do with impressing me on this island, Ruby said boldly as the island came into full view. As they went ashore Ruby felt as if she was in a dream. She had gone to her cabin to touch up her makeup before they disembarked, so she felt confident enough to walk next to the elegant Severin. The island was beautiful and teeming with life. People were selling fruit, spices, and all kinds of trinkets. Ruby decided to buy a bracelet from one of the stalls. So you love to support those in need? Severin asked, looking at her with curious eyes. Well, I just generally love to support anyone who makes the effort of going out there to try and change their lives every day, Ruby replied. They look cheerful and that makes my day a lot better as well, she continued with a bright smile. Oh, so you're rather mature for your age, Severin remarked. And exactly how do you know my age? Ruby asked with a curious smile. I did my research as a good businessman should, Severin responded. Not that I'm a stalker, he continued with his left brow raised. No, I didn't think you were, Ruby commented. How did you know I wasn't a stalker? Severin asked. I just sensed that you were self-confident enough not to have that kind of flaw, Ruby explained. Oh, well, thank you for the compliment, Severin responded. He smiled warmly and reached out his hand to hers, as they approached a shopping center. Ruby returned his smile and placed her hand into his confidently. This feels so good, she thought to herself. Oh, hold up, Ruby. Marian was running towards them, from the direction of the Chapter 15 Ruined Illusions. What does Marian want now? Ruby wondered irritably. Ruby and Severin waited for Marian to catch up with them. Where are you guys off to? Marian asked as soon as she reached them. Oh, hi there, she said to Severin as an afterthought. Marian, this is my friend Severin, Ruby said between tight lips. This is a friend from home, she said to Severin, feeling the bitter taste of calling Marian a friend. Oh, pleased to meet you, Marian, Severin responded and shook hands with the girl. He took Ruby's hand again as they walked on. I assumed you were on your own, Ruby, he said with a curious smile. I did not know that Marian was on the ship. I found out just a while ago myself, Ruby said with a sarcastic smile in Marian's direction. Hello, Signor Castrello, a man from across the street shouted. He hurried over and gave Severin a big hug. Hello, Jorge, Severin responded. Then he turned to Ruby and said, Will you ladies please excuse me? Mr. Lemire and I will only take a few minutes. No problem, Ruby responded. Severin and George then stepped aside to chat a few feet away from Ruby and Marian. Ruby took Marian by the hand and pulled her into the entrance of the shopping center. Just what do you think you're doing? She hissed at Marian. I'm just looking for some company. You guys seem to know your way around, Marian stated pertly. It is also very adventurous to find one's own way around. So be off with you, or I will be bold enough to tell Severin that you are actually hassling me, Ruby dared Marian. Okay, enjoy him while you can. I am really not desperate for company, Marian said, as she walked into a nearby dress boutique. Ruby saw a hair salon a distance further. It was still early enough to go for a hairdo, before she and Severin had dinner. Ruby quickly walked over to Severin. Sorry to interrupt, but I was thinking of going to the salon in the shopping center and then joining you again afterwards if that is okay with you, she asked Severin politely. Oh, I have no problem if that is what you want, Severin responded with a pat on Ruby's shoulder. Just take my phone number then so that you can contact me when you're done, he proposed. Ruby took out her phone and took down Severin's number. Before she turned around, Ruby entered the hair salon with a new sense of purpose. When she rejoined Severin in an Italian restaurant, Ruby looked quite different. She felt so good because she had never worn her hair blown out straight before. It was swinging around rather glamorously and she felt on top of the world. Wow, what a complete change. I almost did not recognize you, Severin exclaimed. Thank you, Ruby responded with a slight blush, as Severin pulled out her chair for her. Severin appeared to be at least 10 years older than her, and Ruby appreciated this, because he really knew how to make a woman feel special. They enjoyed their meal and walked around on the island afterwards. Ruby was enchanted by the beautiful waterfalls and tranquil streams. When they were back on board, Ruby had to rush off and prepare for the night's show. She did sing as if Severin was the only person in the audience that night. After the show, the band held their weekly meeting, so she did not see Severin again. On the following morning, Ruby received a phone call from him. Would you like to join me on the deck before lunchtime? He asked. All right. I will be there just before 1 o'clock, Ruby responded excitedly. They stood looking at the waves of the ocean together, as the ship sailed on. I will be getting off at the next port, but I really want to thank you for singing to me last night, Severin said as he looked deep into Ruby's eyes. It did indeed feel as if you were singing for me only, he said, and with that he bent down and kissed her deeply. Ruby felt as if she was drifting on a cloud. Help, help! Ruby and Severin heard the next instant. They turned around to see Marion down in the water. She seemed to be drowning. When Severin saw Marion battling in the water, he immediately took off his jacket and shoes. He then found the ladder and climbed down carefully before he plunged into the water. He got a hold of her with his arm around her chest and swam to the ship with a backstroke motion, while a ship attendant threw a lifeboat into the water to assist them. Severin managed to get himself and Marion onto the lifeboat, and then to the ladder which led up to the ship's deck. She was wet and shivering as she got back safe and sound. She lay there panting for breath. Ruby then accompanied Marion to her cabin so that she could get rid of her wet clothes. When Ruby closed the door for the sake of privacy, Marion started laughing. "What's wrong? Why are you laughing?" Ruby asked with concern. "One thing for sure. Your boyfriend is a powerful swimmer. You can be happy about that at least." Marion laughed until she doubled up on her bed. "I wasn't even ever going to drown, silly." "You pretended to drown? Really? Now that's just pathetic and childish," Ruby shouted. "Why would you do that? Can't you just lighten up, Ruby?" Marion commented. "Haven't you ever done something just for the sake of the reaction it would cause?" "No, I would not." "You're just nuts," Ruby said irritably. "Well, I thoroughly enjoyed myself," Marion laughed. The next moment there was a knock on the door. "Young lady, I don't have all day," someone was shouting on the other. Chapter 16. Dangerous Encounters. Ruby opened the door hastily. "I'm still getting dressed, silly," Marion shouted. "At this time of the day? You're still not dressed?" asked an elderly gentleman who was standing outside of Marion's door, looking very angry. "You should take care of your clients instead of messing around in other people's business," Ruby reprimanded Marion, who was not laughing anymore. She was flushed red with embarrassment instead. It was clear to Ruby that Marion was the old man's trainee attorney. There could be nothing more to it. Even though Marion clearly had a mental problem in Ruby's opinion, there was no way that Ruby could imagine Marion having an affair with someone that old. Or could she? Ruby wondered. There was a time when Marion had poured foam bath into the school swimming pool, just to be funny. Ruby did not know what to imagine anymore. Maybe she was telling the truth about pretending to drown, just to cause a scene, Ruby told herself. She decided to go and practice her music piece for that night instead. At around sunset, Ruby overheard Marion telling the old man that she had climbed down the side of the ship, because she had noticed that the ladder had been let down. "No, I didn't jump, sir," Marion had said. Ruby was sitting on the deck reading an email, when she heard them talking. They did not notice her sitting there, under an umbrella. "Why didn't you skinny dip while you were at it?" the old man asked. Marion laughed excessively at this remark. "The sharks will eat you next time you try that," the old man added. Ruby got up and walked over to them. "Oh, good to see you again," she said. "Marion, won't you introduce us?" Ruby requested with her eyebrows raised. Marion was caught off guard for a change. "This is my client, Mr. Smith," she said reluctantly. "I am handling his personal legal affairs," Marion added. "This is Ruby Sinclair," she said to the old man. "Nice to meet you, Ruby," the old man said politely. "Oh, so are you working on your own already?" Ruby asked Marion. "No, I am part of a team," Marion had said from between her teeth. She did not like being grilled with questions by Ruby, of all people. "Mr. Smith is right, Marion," Ruby remarked. "You should listen to him because he has a whole lot more wisdom than us." "Oh, I will surely do that," Marion promised with a big fake smile on her face. "But we have to get down to business now. You will have to excuse us," she said to Ruby in dismissal, as she removed some documents from her briefcase. After Severin disembarked that day, Ruby saw him again in New York City 7 weeks later. They had remained in touch by phone on a daily basis since they last separated. Severin had invited Ruby for lunch at a restaurant in the city, and she was really taken in by the atmosphere. Everything there seemed so luxurious. "This is rather unusual," Ruby remarked. "You should just sit back, relax and enjoy it, my dear," Severin said. He took her hand and kissed it. Ruby tried hard to do as he suggested. When they left the restaurant, Ruby was shocked when 2 journalists started to take photos of her and Severin. They were shouting questions which she could not hear clearly. "Come this way with me," Severin said, and he pulled her into a small jewelry shop. "Let's wait in here until they forget about us," he said. "Are they after me, or is it you they want to report about?" Ruby asked in confusion. "I'm a well-known businessman and you are an up-and-coming music star, so they could be after either one of us, or both of us as a couple," Severin explained. "But look here, why do we worry about them when we could be looking at the beautiful jewelry?" he exclaimed. Ruby just wanted to get back to the hotel room which Severin had booked for her. "Look," Isn't this just perfect for you? Severin said after a couple of minutes of browsing. He was holding up a bracelet made of rubies and diamonds. Oh no, that's way too much, Ruby protested. You deserve much more than this, Severin responded. Ruby decided to agree just so that they could get out of there. She wanted some peace and quiet. Severin paid for the bracelet and Ruby put the box with the bracelet inside into her pocket, because she did not want to wear it on the streets. Oh, that's clever of you, Severin agreed. They then took a taxi to Central Park, where they walked amongst the trees, holding hands and catching up about everything that had happened while they were apart. They chatted for about an hour. Would you like to sing for the rest of your life? Severin asked suddenly, while they were discussing their career goals. Well, if I live to a ripe old age, I will have to do something else, Ruby joked. Oh, you know what I mean, Severin insisted. I would like to sing and be involved in the world of music for a very long time. That's all I can say, Ruby declared. That's fine by me. I love a woman who knows her mind, Severin declared. Ruby wondered whether Severin was trying to propose a future with her by saying that. She was not so sure about how that made her feel. They then took a ride on a horse-drawn cart and Ruby felt on top of the world. At your service, madam, Severin said as he helped her to get into the cart. Once inside the cart, Severin kissed her so passionately that Ruby realized that he really did love her, and it made her wonder whether she would ever be able to live without him. There were times when Ruby was overcome with fear, because she had promised herself that her music would always come first. Since meeting Severin, though she has been overcome by moments of insecurity, it felt as if she was losing control over her plans for the first time in her life. She could not seem to get Severin out of her mind. Was she more impressed with him than her career? Ruby asked herself sometimes. She was so afraid of losing her heart to him completely. They rode the cart up to the other side of the park and Severin then phoned his driver to come and pick them up. The car pulled up beside them on the road and Severin opened the door for Ruby. Calvin, do you remember my appointment for later this afternoon? Severin asked and faced the driver for the first time since getting into the car. Calvin was not sitting alone. Beside him was a masked man with a gun held against Calvin's waist. He had been bending low in the car, so that Ruby and Severin did not see him when they got into the car. The man then faced Severin. Shut up or you will be sorry, he warned. Ruby's teeth were chattering with fear. Various thoughts were going through her head. Would she ever see her parents again? Was this the end of her music career, as well as the first great love of her life? Severin was holding her tightly, trying to comfort her. After about 15 minutes of driving and taking many turnoffs as directed by the gunman, the car pulled up next to a house in a middle-class suburb. Get out very carefully and no tricks, the gunman said to them. He was still holding the gun against the driver's waist. What do you want? Severin asked. Who are you working for? The next instant, the front door of the house opened and two other masked men with guns rushed out and held their weapons against Ruby and Severin's backs. The three captives were then led inside the house. The house looked like a normal family home on the inside. There was a comfortable-looking white couch with two accompanying white armchairs in the lounge, as well as pot plants in the corners of the lounge. Sit down, the gunman who had arrived with them commanded. Look, if there's anything you need from me, just say so, but leave these two people alone, Severin asked, his voice firm and calm. Not so quick, the same man answered. Wait until I receive further orders. Orders? But from who? Severin tried again. The same gunman then hit Severin against the head with his gun. Severin fell backwards onto the couch, unconscious. What are you doing? Ruby yelled out. That was not necessary. Do you want some of the same? The gunman asked. Easy now. Let's tie them up and get going, one of the other men said. Two of the three gunmen tied Ruby's hands and feet together with ropes and put duct tape across her mouth to shut her up. They did the same to Calvin. As Severin regained consciousness, they did the same to him and his driver. The two men then locked the front door and apparently walked out through the kitchen door. Then an engine started up, but it did not sound like Severin's car. It sounded like a truck. They drove off and then everything was silent. Chapter 17. Acts of Heroism. Ruby looked at Severin and wondered what he was involved with. Or could it be someone who was after her? No. Ruby told herself. She did not have such powerful adversaries. These men looked like professionals. This was nothing petty. Ruby prayed that they would come out of this alive. She tried hard not to panic by rehearsing a song with sweet lyrics in her mind. She tried to avoid Severin and the driver's eyes because she did not want to see anybody else's panic as well. As night set in, the captives were afraid to make any attempts at setting themselves free. They were mentally and physically exhausted, so they eventually fell asleep. The men did not return until late at night. Remove his tape, Zach, so he can speak to his father, the one in the lead commanded. Zach removed Severin's duct tape and placed a cell phone against his mouth. Tell your father that you are all right and that he should just pay up the money, he told Severin. Hello, Dad, Severin said in a husky voice, because he had been silent for hours. I'm all right, Dad. Just do as they say. Severin looked as if he was about to cry. Zach then replaced the duct tape. Ruby hoped that everything would be all right now. Even though she had no idea of what was happening, she needed to go to the bathroom urgently, so she motioned at Zach by cocking her head to the side a few times. He removed her tape. What? He said in a rough tone. I urgently need the bathroom, Ruby said. The three men then allowed their captives to use the bathroom and tied them all up again. Oh my word! What is happening here? Ruby woke up to see a middle-aged lady standing in the doorway carrying a broom and a bucket. She had a shocked expression on her face. Ruby gestured by nodding her head aggressively at the lady. The woman approached slowly and removed the duct tape from Ruby's mouth. Please help us, Ruby begged. The owners of this house kidnapped us. That's our car outside. So how am I involved with that? How can I believe you? The lady said with a worried expression on her face. How do I know that you won't all attack me? These are decent people who live here. A loving family, she said. What? Those three rough men with guns? Ruby asked. The lady placed her hand over her mouth in shock. Oh my, the family is on holiday. So it must be the husband's brother who is back from jail. But where did he get the keys? She looked thoughtful. There was a time when my keys were missing, but then I found them an hour later, she said as if speaking to herself. I am here to clean. So I clean, then I lock up and leave. I promise if you untie me I will give you something very precious. Then you can leave and I will untie the rest. You don't even have to come back until the family returns. Ruby appealed to the lady with an urgent tone in her voice. The men could return at any minute now, and the woman would become another hostage, if not something worse. What is that you want to give me? The lady asked suspiciously. I can't give you unless you untie me, Ruby answered. But we have to be quick. Those guys can return at any time, she urged. Severin and Calvin were looking at Ruby with wide-stretched eyes. The lady gave Ruby a good look over before she untied her ropes with quick, strong fingers. All right, thank you very much, Ruby said with an emotional laugh. She was very close to losing control. Then Ruby took out the ruby bracelet that Severin had purchased for her earlier. Here, this is worth a lot of money, she told the lady. Take it and you can leave quickly before I untie the others. The woman's eyes were large with surprise, but she shoved the bracelet into her pocket quickly. Good luck to you all, she said before grabbing her bucket and broom. She then left through the front door again. Please don't lock, Ruby called after her. Ruby rushed to untie Severin's ropes. It did not go as fast as it did with the cleaning lady though. After his hands were free, Severin untied his feet by himself. He then untied Calvin's ropes. Wow, Ruby, that was quick thinking on your part, he said while he was busy with Calvin's ropes. Now we have to pray that they don't return before we can leave. Are you all right? He asked with a concerned expression on his face.
I'm okay, Ruby nodded.
Let's just get out of here. Severin hugged Ruby briefly and caressed her hair before turning to Calvin. Let's get out of here, he repeated with an urgent tone of voice. When they arrived at Severin's car, they found that the keys were still in the ignition, so they drove away in time. Nobody seemed to be following them. Ruby heaved a sigh of relief. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, darling, Severin said as he held her close to his chest. Who were those people, Severin? Ruby asked with great interest. I have not the slightest idea, Severin replied in frustration. Many people know about my family fortune. Unfortunately, some of them don't mind to exploit the situation by engaging in criminal behavior. By right I should go around with bodyguards, but I also need my privacy. I'm just so happy that you're safe after all this, he said as he hugged Ruby even closer. When Ruby's mother learned about the kidnapping incident, she asked Ruby to return home immediately. Mom, I still have my contract to sing on the ship and I'm having it renewed, Ruby explained. You're not safe as long as you're involved with that man, Ruby's mother insisted. Ruby knew that her mother's fears were not unfounded, but she felt that she needed Severin in her life. He meant so much to her and she was falling more in love with him every day. Mom, he really loves me. You should have seen how protective he was of me during the entire incident, Ruby insisted. I understand, dear. But it would not have happened if he was not so rich and influential, Mrs. Sinclair insisted. Promise that you will at least come home for a while then, her mother asked. I am coming home in 2 months' time for a break, Mom, Ruby explained. But then think seriously about being involved with a man who's so rich that he gets you kidnapped, Ruby's mother warned again before hanging up. Ruby and Severin spent the 2 days after the kidnapping incident in Ruby's hotel suite, with just watching movies and ordering room service for meal times. She did not know how to make Severin aware of the fact that her mother disagreed about their relationship though. Severin, I'm going home in 2 months' time, Ruby announced when they said goodbye, before she boarded the ship at the end of their time in the city. Well, you should really be looking forward to it after that terrible incident, Severin commented. I will see you before then, don't worry, he said before he kissed her goodbye. Ruby always felt very emotional each time that they parted ways. It always felt as if it was the last time that she would be seeing him. She was miserable for about an entire week, until Maxim came upon her sitting alone on the deck and sunbathing one afternoon. I know just what you need, he announced. Oh, and what would that be? Ruby asked curiously. Come along with me. I have something important to share with you, Maxim said with a finger across his lip. Chapter 18, Testing the Waters. Maxim led Ruby to the backstage area, where they practiced every afternoon. He sat down at the piano and pulled out a music sheet. Here is a piece of music which is written and composed just for you. The person who composed it does not know you, but when I heard it sung by someone else I immediately knew that you were the one who should actually sing it. Ruby read the music and was immediately intrigued. All right, she agreed. The lyrics are really special. All about loss and the courage to overcome, she continued. So, shall we begin to practice? Maxim asked. You doing the vocals and me accompanying you on piano? Great, Ruby agreed excitedly. Ruby and Maxim practiced very seriously for a week. Then they began to perform the song at their evening concerts. The audience could not get enough of it. I can't believe how they just love that song, Ruby commented. They love it just as much as I do. I told you that the song was meant for you, Maxim agreed. They were sitting in one of the lounges of the ship. The other band members were practicing for their own song. This looks very cozy, a voice said behind them. Ruby was surprised to see Severin standing there, all handsome and with a look of intrigue in his eyes. She had not expected him. A few weeks had passed since she had seen him in New York City. Severin, you're back sooner than I expected. Ruby jumped up to greet him with a hug and a warm kiss on the lips. Good to see you, Maxim said and rose to leave. Oh, are you leaving? Severin asked after greeting Ruby in return. Please stay a few more minutes. Maxim obliged and sat down again. Tell us about your trips, Maxim asked Severin a few minutes later, after the waiter took their drink orders. I'm sure yours are much more adventurous than ours. Oh, did Ruby tell you about our fiasco in New York? Severin asked. The waiter approached and placed each one's order in front of them. I thought Ruby wanted that kidnapping adventure to be a secret, Severin stated as he gave Ruby a sideways cynical look, which Maxim did not notice, because he was staring at Ruby in surprise. Which kidnapping adventure? Maxim asked in alarm. We had a bit of an altercation with some robbers in New York City, but I did not want many people to know about it, Ruby explained. My parents are already very upset about it, she continued. Well, that's only natural, Severin commented. But we will have to find a way to set their minds at ease. But Ruby, you cannot keep something that's serious from the band, Maxim said in an appalled tone. It does affect us as well. We need to know about your movements just as you need to know about ours, he continued. I understand, but I just wanted to forget about it, Ruby said guiltily. It seemed like you forgot about more than just that, Severin commented. Maxim sensed some tension in the air, so he rose to leave. I am going to check on the others. You two should do all the catching up that you can, he announced and left abruptly. Severin, what are you referring to? What else have I forgotten? Ruby asked with a concerned expression on her face. Well, how would you feel if you expected to find me pining for you? But then you're shocked because when you arrive you see me totally engrossed in someone else's company? Wow, Severin. Don't say you're jealous. Ruby asked curiously. How was I engrossed in someone else's company? This was the last thing that she expected from him. Would you not be jealous under the same circumstances? Severin asked incredulously. No, I would not be jealous because I am secure in the knowledge that our feelings for one another are strong and nobody can come between us, Ruby stated. I think we should call it a night. I will see you in the morning, Severin stated, as he gave Ruby a kiss on the forehead and left still in a very bad mood. Ruby struggled to fall asleep. She felt shaken. How could Severin react like that? She had never seen him like that before and it frightened her. Was that how a seriously jealous boyfriend acted? At some point in the past she had thought that Claude was jealous, but that was mild compared to this. The present situation made her feel emotionally threatened. On the other hand, should she perhaps feel flattered? The following morning, Ruby was still not feeling alright emotionally. "How is my angel this morning?" Severin asked as he came up behind her and hugged her closely to his chest. "I'm well, and you?" Ruby responded in a wavering voice. She was not sure about how to react. Severin had been so angry on the previous night. Was he suffering from a bipolar disposition? She asked herself. "I have a surprise for you. So sit down quickly," Severin said excitedly. Chapter 19 Broken Dreams. Severin pulled out a chair for Ruby so that she could sit down. "What's the surprise?" she asked in confusion. Was he really not angry anymore? Did he forget how he reacted last night? "Eat your breakfast while I tell you," Severin suggested. "I already ate," he added. Ruby did not have much of an appetite. Something about Severin's attitude last night made her feel a little bit uneasy in his company. She felt angry with him because his behavior was out of line in her opinion. "How would you like it if I bought you an apartment in New York City?" he asked, as he held Ruby's hands and looked into her eyes. Ruby always felt as if she was melting whenever he looked into her eyes like that. She then forgave him immediately. "Wow, that's no small investment," Ruby responded curiously. She assumed that he was joking. "Why not?" Severin asked. "You need a place of your own when you are in New York, and when you are done with your career on the ship you will have a place of your own," he explained. Severin then took his cell phone out of his pocket. "Here is the sale agreement for the purchase." He opened his phone documents and showed the sales agreement to Ruby. She could not make out much of the legal terms there. She would have to ask Maxim if she wanted to know more. "Do you think an apartment is a big investment?" Severin joked with a lifted eyebrow. "Well, what if I wanted to give you one of my airplanes with your name written on it? An apartment is something I actually need, but an airplane? Much too extravagant," Ruby laughed. "So it is the apartment that you're settling for?" Severin asked. "Would you really buy me an airplane?" Ruby asked a little bit more seriously. Did Severin always go to such great lengths to make up after an argument? "I must say I'm overwhelmed," she exclaimed with a little laugh. "I would really appreciate having an apartment as a gift of love," she said as she looked him carefully in the eyes. "And thank you so much for that," Ruby said. She then rose and gave him a kiss on the forehead. Then the lips. Severin looked completely relaxed. It was as if the previous night's argument never happened. "Nothing is too much for you, my love," he said. Severin bought her the apartment a week later, and Ruby enjoyed having her own place in New York City. The place was lavishly furnished. "Wow, you even thought about a piano," she exclaimed to Severin on the phone. She was checking out the apartment on her own, because Severin was away on a business trip. "You can think about me while you're playing it," Severin had suggested. Ruby and Severin were dating for almost 2 years at this point. Her mother still did not approve of the relationship because of all the media coverage that was placed on it. "Mom, I don't like to argue with you about this," Ruby complained when her mother broached the subject again one evening. "Then please see the sense in what I'm saying," her mother insisted. Ruby was waiting for Severin to visit her in the apartment which he had bought for her in NYC because she had cooked a special dinner for him. "Mom, I have to go now because I have something on the stove," Ruby announced. "I promised to think about what you said." Ruby did indeed take the time to think while she looked at her view through the front window of the apartment. It was really a beautiful, comfortable life which she led now. She was really doing well with her music. Some passengers were sending video clips of her singing onto social media platforms, and television stations were contacting her about live interviews and shows. As soon as she was officially done with singing on the ship, she would branch out into further kinds of musical entertainment. "I can actually someday buy something like this for myself," Ruby said out loud. "Oh, and what would you buy yourself?" Severin asked behind her. He was standing in the doorway. "Hello there," Ruby greeted Severin with a kiss. "No, I was just thinking that my career is growing so well that I can buy things like an apartment as well someday soon," Ruby explained. "That's good to know, as long as you don't ditch this apartment when you buy your own."
Severin jaqued.
"Of course not," Ruby replied. "I will just have to rent it out," she teased. Severin laughed at her joke, but he did seem a little concerned about her growing sense of self-confidence. They enjoyed their dinner together, and just before they had their dessert, Severin stopped Ruby from going back to the kitchen. "Hang on," he said, before taking her hand and leading her back to her chair. "I have something to tell you." Ruby's heart fluttered with anticipation. She looked into his eyes trying to detect his mood. What was he going to say? She wondered. Was it a marriage proposal? She had already been dreaming about being married to him for a while now. She had dreamt about how they would travel around the world as a couple, and not spend so much time apart anymore. Could he be proposing today? Ruby, I am in a situation which I cannot get out of. Please try to understand. He began and crouched down on his hunches in front of her. This is something which I have absolutely no control over, because it involves business financial investments as well as loyalty. Severin's eyes were flickering and he appeared to be very uncomfortable and in emotional pain. It seemed as if his very life depended on what he was about to declare. Oh no, Ruby thought. This was not sounding good. She was beginning to have cramps in her stomach as she held her breath. What do you mean? She asked with bated breath. My parents have arranged a marriage for me with the daughter of a socialite, Severin announced. Chapter 20. Sounds of Healing. Ruby was not so sure that she had heard properly. Was Severin mentioning a marriage? But it was not to her. The dishcloth and the plates which she was carrying back to the kitchen slipped from her grasp and crashed on the floor. Wait, Ruby. Careful now, Severin exclaimed and reached out to help pick up the broken pieces of glass. Don't touch anything, I will fetch the scoop, Ruby said. She gently pushed Severin aside and took a deep breath. Severin was not so sure about what was happening. Why was Ruby suddenly so calm? He hoped she was all right. Ruby walked to the kitchen with firm steps, although she was trembling inside. She came back and Severin looked at her as if she was a character on a movie screen. Ruby bent down to sweep up the broken glass. Halfway through, she stopped and rose slowly with the scoop in her hand. Severin, did you just say that you have a marriage obligation, but you don't want to comply? Yes, you're right. More or less. I don't want to, but I have to, Severin said carefully with his eyes fixed on Ruby. So, am I right in assuming that you really don't want to marry this girl? Ruby asked as she lowered herself back onto her seat. Yes. But Ruby dear, they want me to marry this girl, because it is part of a family arrangement involving my parents' friends and business associates, Severin explained. He knelt down in front of her and tried to take her hand. I did not know about this until now, he explained painstakingly. Ruby moved her hand away from Severin's grasp and stood up firmly again. The contents of the scoop dropped and clanked to the floor. I cannot believe what you are saying, Ruby said in a bewildered tone. I am not the person whom you should be speaking to about something like this. What happened to the trust between us? It has nothing to do with our relationship, Ruby, Severin tried to explain. How does that work? Ruby asked. Of course it has everything to do with us. But we can still be together, dear. It is only a marriage on paper, Severin pleaded, while making gestures with his hands. Please, just at least allow me to clean up this mess. And how are you going to clean up the other mess you made, Severin? Ruby asked. Her face had lost its facade of calm. She was beginning to get angry. Is that why it was so easy to accuse me of being unfaithful with Maxim? Because you are actually the one who is doing things behind my back? She asked while looking Severin straight in the eye. But I told you, Severin insisted. It isn't me. It's my parents' doing. So, are you not old and independent enough to withstand them? Ruby asked with her left hand in her side. She refused to hand Severin the scoop. Just leave, Ruby commanded in a tone of authority. Severin conceded temporary defeat. He knew that Ruby was very strong-willed. All right, I will leave now, but I am coming back tomorrow. Just go now, Ruby shouted. She went to the kitchen to get herself a glass of cold water to cool her temper. When Ruby returned to the lounge and dining area, Severin had thankfully already left. She closed and locked the door, before throwing herself onto the couch, where she lay weeping for what felt like ages. When Ruby awoke, the pieces of broken glass were still on the floor, next to the scoop and brush. She swept everything together and went to the kitchen. The dessert was still there on the table, waiting to be dished up. Ruby took the dessert spoon and took the entire serving bowl with her to the lounge. I can at least make sure that this does not go to waste, she told herself. I will eat my share as well as his. When Severin came knocking the following morning, he did not find Ruby in. She had gone off to the ship to join the rest of the music band. The ship was sailing later in the day. She did not leave a note for Severin in the apartment, and when he phoned she did not answer. You are really packed in early this time, Ruby, Maxim commented when he saw Ruby arrive with her suitcase. Ruby went straight down to her cabin. She decided that she had done enough of crying the previous night. Her makeup hit her swollen eyelids. She sat down on her bed and took out pen and paper. It is time for me to write my own music, she said to herself in the mirror. Dictate your own future, girl, she said out loud. Ruby wrote 2 songs, then left her cabin to go and visit the ship's theater. She was relieved to find it unoccupied. She played the piano and practiced the first song. It had a beautiful tune and deep, sentimental lyrics. Ruby practiced until she was so tired that she took a nap on the small couch. Oh my! How tired can you be to sleep in such an uncomfortable place? Exclaimed Lila. Come Ruby. Go sleep in your bed. We are not having band practice tonight, she declared as she helped Ruby up. When did you last hear from Severin? Maxim asked one afternoon when he found Ruby busy writing a song on the deck. I don't hear you talking about him so much these days. Well, I think he is really busy, Ruby lied. You do know that you can trust me with anything, huh? Maxim asked. It's a long story, but I will tell you as soon as I am ready, Ruby promised. Well, I will be waiting. By the way, the songs you are writing have such depth of feeling. Have you noticed how the audience just loves it when you sing a new song? Maxim asked. Can't say I have really, Ruby responded thoughtfully. I am so focused on the music myself when I sing. I have noticed and I am really happy for you, Maxim replied. But I want you to take your 2-week holiday now to recharge your batteries. It is not at the exact time that we planned, but I think the right time for your break is now. It will only do you good, Maxim advised firmly. Ruby knew that she should not argue. How soon should I go? She asked. At the next port in Scotland you can get off if you want to. You can book a flight home and a hotel room for the night, Maxim suggested. He then left Ruby on her own to make up her mind. They had just departed from a small island. Ruby sat down and imagined how wonderful it would be to be home with her family and friends again. There was so much to tell them. Good afternoon, sweet songbird. Am I so unfortunate that you are leaving just after I have embarked on the ship? Chapter 21 New Beginnings. The voice of the person speaking behind Ruby sounded slightly familiar. She turned around and was totally surprised to see the man she had met on her first night, sailing on the ship over 2 years ago. How are you doing, Ruby? He asked. Oh, it's you again. Ruby responded in surprise. Farrell, right? Yes, indeed, he agreed delightedly. There were crinkles in the corners of his eyes when he smiled, and this immediately warmed Ruby to him. It's been about 2 years. So you finally remembered to get back on board, Ruby joked with a laugh. He looked just as she had last seen him, with his gold-touched hair and brown eyes with golden flecks in them. Ah yes. Unfortunately for me you are ever elusive, Farrell joked. No, not if you really tried, Ruby teased lightheartedly. A few days had passed since her breakup with Severin. She had avoided close contact with others ever since. She had spent her days rehearsing her new, self-composed songs rigorously every day. At night, she had sang each song as if it was her last. This had caused great appreciation with the audience, and it carried her through from one day to the next. She did not eat much because she was totally focused on her music, and she snacked on chocolates instead. Seeing Farrell, though, was like a breath of fresh air. I so wish I could have said goodbye properly last time. I was told that you were still asleep. I only took the trip from Calais to Dover, because the company there sent me an email late on the night that I met you, Farrell explained. So I had to leave before you rose. I had no idea that you would be sleeping late, but I should have anticipated that artists who performed until late at night would not be able to rise early, he added with a kind smile. Well, I'm glad you finally found your way back to the ship, Ruby joked.
No dir.
I found the way to your wonderful voice. There were times when you were not on the ship, I was told, because I used to make inquiries. Anyway, the people on the boat are raving about all your latest songs, Farrell declared. Ruby was caught off guard by this. She was not aware of the fact that she was a topic of popular discussion on the cruise. She felt really flattered and humbled. So, are you really interested in my music? She asked shyly. But of course I am. It is a blessing just to listen to you sing, Ruby, and you should remember that in case you ever consider giving up on your career one day, Farrell declared. Remember how your voice eases the pain and enriches the lives of those who hear you sing. That is truly good to hear, thank you, Ruby stated in a serious and appreciative tone. Before you depart, we need to have dinner again and maybe exchange phone numbers this time, Farrell suggested. We will see about the phone numbers, Ruby responded. A dinner to catch up on news would be just great though. Ruby had blocked Severin's number on her phone because the thought of what he had done left a bitter taste in her mouth. She did not want to make herself vulnerable by freely giving out her phone number anymore, so she was hesitant about giving it to Farrell. At dinner there was lovely, light music playing in the background. Ruby had gone to change into her red dress with the fishtail, since it was supposed to be a formal dinner, and she would not have to go and change for the stage afterward. Farrell pulled out a chair for her and remained behind her back. He then placed something cool around her neck. She felt the warmth of his fingers on her neck, and it caused a tingle. "I think this will round off your look," he said before he went to sit down opposite her. "Oh, Farrell, what is this?" Ruby uttered in amazement. "That's for all the time that we spent apart. You can sing with that around your neck tonight," Farrell said with a warm smile. Ruby tried to inspect the necklace. It appeared to be made of rubies laid in gold. Why was everyone showering her with lavish gifts? She wondered. "Are you sure that you want me to keep this?" she asked uncertainly. "You deserve it, and it does your dress justice. Remember, Ruby, you are a talented artist and you are still going far because of your hard work," Farrell stated firmly. "Each ruby in that necklace represents the value of your voice and the difference you make in the lives of others." Ruby was truly touched by these words because they sounded truly heartfelt. She felt overwhelmed and blessed while they ate dinner. Afterwards, Farrell took her hand and led her to the dance floor. "Oh, it's ages since I danced," Ruby protested. "Well, then it's about time you danced again." The music came on and they danced effortlessly across the floor until they were both tired. "Now, since we caught our breath, I have a favor to ask, Ruby," Farrell said with a charming smile, revealing perfectly white teeth. "I would be pleased to oblige, but what kind of favor exactly?" Ruby asked with curiosity. "Would you like to sing a duet with me?" Farrell asked with a sincere expression on his face. "Really?" Ruby asked in surprise. "I have actually been practicing," Farrell announced. Ruby was humbled by this statement. "So you are a singer?" she asked with interest. "I used to sing at theaters around the world, but then I became connected to the world of stockbroking," Farrell responded. "Then you might be way out of my league," Ruby protested. "I can hear how powerful your voice is. Let's rehearse backstage at the theater, since you guys are obviously not performing tonight," he asked sincerely. "What song will we sing then?" Ruby asked. "One of your songs, of course. The one called Fly Away," Farrell stated clearly. Ruby knew that she had no excuse now because Farrell apparently knew the song. He must have heard it somewhere, or seen the video, since some of the passengers were loading videos of some of Ruby's songs onto YouTube and other social media platforms. "Let's get to it then," Ruby said excitedly when their meal was over. They rehearsed for about an hour and Ruby was amazed at Farrell's wonderful tenor voice. Their voices blended well. Apparently Farrell had already arranged with the ship's entertainment crew that he would be singing that night, because as soon as he and Ruby stepped onto the stage, a master of ceremonies announced, "Give it up for the lovely Ruby Sinclair and the marvelous Farrell Mendez." There was a roaring applause even before the two artists sang. It lasted for quite a while afterward as well. When Farrell bid Ruby and Maxim good night, Maxim congratulated Ruby on the performance. "It was really a performance to remember," he said. "Do you really think so?" Ruby asked with bated breath. She had assumed that the applause was on behalf of Farrell mainly. "Oh, yes, you did me really proud," Maxim assured her. "But do you know who that man really is?" Chapter 22 Time to Grow. Ruby was not sure what Maxim was trying to tell her. "Do I know who he is?" Ruby asked. "Yes, do you really?" Maxim asked again. "Well, he was the man who left me a box of chocolates 2 years ago, when I officially started with the band." "Well, I did not see him then, but I did today," Maxim said. "I don't think you're aware of who he truly is, because he is just as influential as Severin. I also happen to remember that your parents were not so happy about you being involved with high-profile super-wealthy men. Is that not so, Ruby?" Maxim stated. "Is he very wealthy?" Ruby asked in bewilderment. "He does not seem peculiar in any way. In fact, he is rather down to earth," Ruby explained. She felt uneasy in the knowledge that Maxim and possibly other people on the ship knew Farrell better than she did. They had connected so easily and she had felt so content about having him around. It was too much to digest right then. "All right, Maxim. I will bear in mind what you said and not fall head over heels in love with him," she promised. When Ruby lay in bed that night, she promised herself that she would not give her heart to men who were so influential financially and socially, that they felt that the world belonged to them. Before she dropped off to sleep though, she did admit to herself that Farrell was not like Severin. There was a certain depth within him. The following morning, Ruby was up early because she wanted to chat with Farrell one last time before she disembarked at the next port. She found him in the restaurant already having breakfast. "Good morning," she greeted. "Good morning to you as well," Farrell returned with a brilliant smile. "May I join you or are you expecting company?" Ruby asked. "You're more than welcome," Farrell declared. Last night was so beautiful, I wasn't so sure about whether I had dreamt it all. Farrell continued when Ruby sat down opposite him. Your voice is really angelical, Ruby. Oh no, don't say that, Ruby protested, as she blushed and covered her mouth with her hand. You're flattering me. You are the one with the golden voice, Ruby stated as she looked him straight in the eyes. I was even wondering whether you could give me some tips to improve my voice, she said in a more serious tone. Your voice will simply grow and develop along with you, my dear. Just keep on singing with your entire heart and soul. You will then have everything you ever wanted to achieve with your voice and your talent. Patience and consistency is the key, Farrell said as he smiled warmly at her. When Ruby disembarked from the ship, she felt a little bit nostalgic at leaving Farrell behind just as she was beginning to get to know him. She resolved not to tell her mother about him yet. She had to wait until she knew him better. It's great to hear that you're coming home for a while, dear, Ruby's mother said when Ruby phoned from her overnight room at a guest lodge. She then went out to take a walk around in the town area. Ruby was busy purchasing a wraparound skirt at a stall when she realized that someone was taking photos of her. This was such an isolated place, so how would anyone know who she was? Hello, she called out to the man who was dressed in a casual denim jeans and a white shirt. Can I help you? Ruby called again, but the man ran away. The following morning, Ruby had forgotten about the photographer when she boarded a flight to London. She wanted to spend some time there before flying back home. The flight was short, so there was enough time to walk around and book a flight to Canada. On her second day in London, Ruby decided to chat with Claude again on the phone, because she was visiting one of Claude's family fashion boutiques in London. She and Claude were still in touch since university graduation. They were good friends lately. I am really enjoying myself for a change. Just walking around, no rehearsals, no hair and makeup sessions, etc., Ruby mentioned to Claude. It would be great to hook up again just before Christmas. What do you think? Claude suggested. We could try that because we still have 5 months to go before then, Ruby agreed. If you decide to buy something, will you please take a picture of yourself wearing the dress and send it to me? Claude asked. I will most definitely do that if I find something within my budget. Ruby laughed. When Ruby walked out of the shop with the small package, she saw the photographer who was taking photos of her on the night before. He took a quick photo of her again and ran off. Ruby decided to run after him. The strange photographer turned into a small arcade. Ruby turned in there as well and looked around. Luckily, she spotted him walking into a restaurant. She followed him there discreetly and peeped through the window. She searched until she spotted him sitting at a small table. He was not alone. Sitting right opposite him was Chapter 23, Ruby's New Wings. What on earth did Severin think he was doing? Ruby wondered. I knew I was not famous enough to be followed by paparazzi, she said to herself out loud. Ruby was in no way ready to forgive Severin. Shouldn't he be with his new wife? She shook her hair out and boldly walked into the restaurant. Ruby walked straight up to Severin and faced him. I know you are already married, Severin. It was a public spectacle, wasn't it? It was all over social media and even on some news channels. So what are you doing having me followed? She asked with her hands on her hips. Wait.
Severin urged.
Don't make a scene. Please sit down. I do no desire to sit down, Severin. Why did you send this guy to take photos of me? Ruby demanded to know. She was speaking in a lower tone of voice now, to avoid drawing the attention of the other people in the restaurant. Do you know how much I miss you, Ruby? Why is it wrong of me to have regular pics about how you're growing and developing in life? Severin asked with an earnest expression on his face. Look, you lost all those privileges when you left me to marry someone else, Severin. You have no need to be interested in my progress in life, Ruby stated angrily. Wow, that's a bit harsh, Severin commented with raised eyebrows. When did you become so vindictive, Ruby? He asked. You made me this way, so enjoy the fruits of your labor, Ruby said with an angry grimace. Now please stop following me around, or I will have to take legal action. You are pushing things too far, Severin, she said in a weary tone of voice. But we don't have to be like this, Severin said while he reached out to her hand. We both know how much we mean to each other, he insisted. Ruby pulled her hand away from his reach, sat down and spoke in a slow and calm tone. Please devote yourself to your marriage and find your peace in the decision you made. In that way we will both be content. She then rose abruptly and left before Severin could detain her any further. London had now lost all its appeal to Ruby. She had so looked forward to celebrating the fact that she was getting over her hurt feelings after Severin had left her for another woman. Ruby could not wait to get home and spend time in her home village, where her folks were waiting for her. Back at home in the village in Canada, Ruby's mother had prepared her favorite stew. Lamb with farm-fresh vegetables and home-baked bread. They were sitting in the dining room having lunch together as a family. Her younger sister Meshai had made a peach pie. Ruby's younger brother Manuel was still at college for the day. Ruby could not wait to see him. "Do you eat healthy food on the ship, Ruby?" Meshai asked. "Oh yes. We have a variety of food to choose from, and there's always a healthy option as well," Ruby responded. Felt really good to be at home. "Chris is now dating that German girl named Leischen," Ruby's mother announced. "She seems like a really nice girl," Ruby's father added. "Yes, he did tell me when we chatted on the phone last month," Ruby commented. She and Chris were in touch at least once a month, when they filled each other in about current events concerning their personal lives, careers, and also local news from home and on the ship. "Do they seem happy though?" Ruby asked. "I could not quite make out whether Chris was really thrilled about the relationship or not," Ruby added. "They do go everywhere together," Meshai commented. "So I guess one can say that they are besotted with one another." "I'm glad to hear that," Ruby commented. "I for one am going to work on my songwriting abilities for the next 2 weeks, before I rejoin the ship crew for my final 3 months on sea." "Are you sure that you are ready to leave that group?" Ruby's father asked. "You seem to be so content with them." "I do want to try new challenges, so I guess something else will come up at the right time," Ruby explained. "I want to explore as many avenues of music as I can." Later on that day, Ruby was on the beach practicing a new song and singing her heart out when she heard voices behind her. "Hey Ruby!" Chris called out. He ran towards her and they hugged excitedly. "You do know Leischen, of course," Chris said with a gesture of his hand towards Leischen, who was standing by his side with a bright smile on her face. The friendly German girl stepped forward and gave Ruby a warm hug as well. "Nice to see you again," she said. "It's really great to see the two of you again," Ruby said. "We should have dinner together sometime. Then we can discuss high school prom and college days again," Ruby added with a happy laugh. "That's a good idea, but for now let's do something from way back," Chris suggested. "Sandcastles," Ruby yelled in excitement. "Well, then sandcastles it is, Ruby," Chris agreed happily. "Let's build some really amazing sandcastles." The three of them spent the rest of the afternoon building sandcastles on the beach. When Ruby arrived at home, her mother was waiting for her on the patio. "You left your phone at home and you received phone calls from 2 different gentlemen," Ruby's mother said, with a concerned expression on her face. "Was one of them not Maxim?" Ruby asked with uncertainty. "No, neither one of them was Maxim, but the other one mentioned that he was in town and that he had to meet with you urgently," Ruby's mother said. "He asked that you call him back as soon as you arrived back from the beach." Chapter 24, Flying High. Ruby had a knot in the middle of her stomach. Could it be that Severin had followed her after all her warnings? She checked the 2 numbers on her phone, but neither one of them looked familiar. Ruby's mother had followed her to her bedroom. "Ruby, I hope you have made a clean break with Severin," her mother asked. "Yes, Mom. There's nothing between us anymore. I made it clear to him," Ruby reassured her mother. "Just be sure that you don't allow yourself to be exploited by anyone anymore," Ruby's mother said, before she left Ruby to deal with her phone calls alone. Ruby thought it was safe to return the call which was made first. She redialed the number. "Hello, who is this?" she asked. "Hello, Ruby, it's Revel. I just called to find out how you're doing," Revel from the band responded. "Oh, I am doing okay, Revel. Just settling in back home. How is the rest of the group doing?" Ruby asked. "We are doing well, thanks. I do think Lila is missing you though," Revel mentioned. "Oh, why do you say that?" Ruby asked. "Well, she's a little bit on the grumpy side, so please be sure to call her sometime," Revel suggested. "I will do that," Ruby promised with a smile on her face. "Thanks for checking in though," Ruby said. "Listen, Ruby," Revel continued. "There might be somebody who will phone you in connection with a record deal. I'm not sure about the details, but Maxim said I should let you know about that." "Oh, I think he has tried to phone me already, but I was spending some time at the beach," Ruby explained. "Well then, let me not delay you any further. Try and get back to the record producer as soon as possible. You never know what he has to offer," Revel advised. "It just might be something good," he said in closing. After Revel ended the call, Ruby had mixed feelings. She had half hoped that Farrell had traced her number anyway and decided to phone her. During their breakfast together, he had asked again if he could have her phone number before she got off the ship. "I'm not so sure about that yet, I'm sorry," Ruby had responded. "Perhaps when we meet again next time?" she had proposed. "That is perfectly all right with me," Farrell had responded. It is good to follow your instincts. Ruby had then bade him goodbye, before going back to her cabin, feeling a bit regretful now about not giving him her number. Ruby wondered why someone would approach her about a record deal when she was not singing on her own. Ruby sat down on her bed, before returning the second phone call. She wanted to feel at ease when she spoke to this stranger. Good afternoon. This is Ruby Sinclair. I am returning a phone call, Ruby said waveringly, when a man answered the phone. Oh, how are you, Ruby? I am happy that you returned my call. The stranger responded with a clear and warm-sounding voice. I am doing well, thank you, Ruby responded. What is the call about? She asked. My name is Joshua Sanders and I am a record producer. I am currently at our offices in your town. A colleague of mine heard you sing on a ship recently, and she strongly suggested that we make you an offer of producing your own short CD. How does that sound to you? Ruby was not sure how to respond. This was totally unexpected. Could it be true, though? She wondered. She decided to talk it over with Maxim first. Thank you, that sounds really wonderful, Mr. Sanders. I will think it over and call you back soon. Is that okay? Ruby said in response. She hoped that she did not sound arrogant. But of course, think it over and get back to me as soon as you make up your mind, Joshua had responded jovially before he ended the call. It almost sounded too good to be true. Ruby decided to consult her mother and younger sister about the offer. She found them both busy watching the Food Channel on television. Guys, sorry to interrupt, but there's something important which I have to discuss with you, Ruby announced. Oh, tell us quickly, Meshai responded excitedly and turned to her elder sister expectantly. The second call was from a record producer, Mom, Ruby said excitedly. He heard about me and got my phone number from Maxim. Isn't that awesome? So what happened? Does he want you to sing or record a song? Ruby's mother asked in confusion. He offered me a record deal so that I can record a CD, Ruby explained. That's awesome, Meshai exclaimed. So how many songs does that mean? Ruby's mother asked. Even one song would be an important breakthrough, Mom, Ruby answered. All right, girl. Don't get too excited. Clear it up with Maxim first, Ruby's mother advised. It is always important to get the opinion of an experienced professional, do you see? Yes, Mom. I just wanted to tell you guys first, Ruby explained. She immediately phoned Maxim. Oh, I'm very happy for you, Ruby, Maxim responded when Ruby spoke to him about the recording deal. What are you going to do? Will you start recording now, and if so, will you be singing with a group or solo? I am not sure about that yet, Ruby responded. But I have not completed my term with the band yet. I have to be back in 2 weeks' time, isn't that so? And anyway, how long does it take to record a short CD? Ruby asked. Don't you worry about the band. We will always be there if you want to come back, Maxim said. Right now, though, you should focus on your career growth. That's what all this is about, isn't it? Thank you so much, Maxim, Ruby exclaimed. Oh, another thing is that my mother is a bit worried and wants to know whether the record company is legitimate, Ruby asked. Well, we just have to read through the contract. You and I can each have a copy to go through. I don't think you have anything to worry about, though. They do have a good reputation, Maxim stated. Thank you, Maxim. I will contact them tomorrow morning then, Ruby said in conclusion. Ruby felt ecstatic. She ran to her bedroom and danced around until she flopped down on the bed. That night, just before bedtime, Ruby had already practiced her words. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. I will gladly accept your offer. The following morning, Ruby was up early and was too excited to eat breakfast. You have to eat something or you will faint from excitement, Meshai commented. I will do that as soon as I am done with my call, Ruby said in response. Joshua Sanders was happy with Ruby's acceptance of his offer. Then I suggest that you come in sometime this morning, to have an introduction into the entire process of recording. You can then also meet some of the people whom you will be working with, he suggested. I will do just that, Mr. Sanders, Ruby responded before she ended the call. I have to eat and leave as soon as possible, Ruby said to her sister. I am off college today because I don't have any classes. Please say I can come with you, Meshai begged with puppy dog eyes. All right, but only for today. I am going to view the recording studios and meet the team, Ruby announced. Ruby and her sister took their mother's car and Ruby drove in the direction of town. When they were almost at their destination, Ruby's phone rang. Meshai answered. Ruby's phone. Who's calling? Please give Ruby the phone, a man said in a curt voice. Meshai did not know what to do. Ruby is driving. She cannot answer the phone now, Meshai replied. Well, tell her to pull off the road, because whatever deal she's being offered at that record company is not as valuable as what I can offer her, the stranger said.